Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sunrise Apologetics. And I realize when I reference the time of day that you may not be listening to it at that time of day. So if it is afternoon or evening or whatever it is, good. Welcome to you. And kind of just have some thoughts today about the majesty and the depth of God. And I think there's a lot to be said for the presence of God in our lives. There's a lot to be said for the active role that He takes, not just in salvation, but in the church and sanctification in all of these areas. But I feel like there are times when the mainstream church, or even Christians, or strong Christians, or even myself, that we set aside the majesty of God for the trivial matters of this earth in our lives. And what I kind of mean by that is God spends His time in eternity, and we will spend the rest of our lives in eternity with Him as believers. And so everything that happens on this earth doesn't compare to what's going to happen in eternity, where God will be worshipped fully, accurately, perfectly, all these things. And so again and again, I think that we get bogged down by trivial matters because we are still in the trivial flesh. We're still in the current state of the flesh. We're still in these wretched old bodies, and so the cares of these bodies, the cares of the world, quickly kind of wrap around us. And I think that there's a time to step back and notice the majesty of God, be in awe of the depth of God, and enjoy that depth. I think there's a part of the Christian life where we deeply want to experience this. We're just held back by sin, or by things we have not confessed, or even by the flesh. So what I'd like to do is, there's a text from the book of Psalms, and this is Psalm 107. And starting in verse 23 of Psalm 107, it says this: "Some went down to the sea in ships, doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, His wondrous works in the deep." That's verse 24. One of my favorite things to do is go to the ocean and vacation with my family. I live in north central Florida, so for me, my favorite area is kind of the Cocoa Beach area. I'm also a big space nerd. I love NASA. I'm actually hoping to go back to the Kennedy Space Center this next year if COVID allows. I love all that stuff. I mean, I think I could name. I could tell you, quickly the astronauts who flew the missions to the moon, and before the Mercury and Gemini and Apollo programs. I don't really know much about the shuttles. I was kind of bored as a kid, to be honest, with the shuttle. It just seemed like we didn't do anything except go up there. And I know that sounds so arrogant to say, oh, they didn't really do anything. But I think after you land on the moon, there's a part of just going around the low Earth orbit doesn't really have as much majesty. So I think someday I'll make a video actually about the moon. That would be pretty cool to do so. Talking about the some of my favorite missions: Apollo 8, Apollo 11, Apollo 13. So I love that area of the beach. I love the Cocoa Beach area, and I love standing on the beach. And of course, it's wonderful to take my children during the day and build sandcastles and run into the water and splash each other. And and they're getting old enough where I can just kind of chuck them into the ocean now and without them crying. And so it's always a lot of fun. The other, of course, it's wonderful to walk the beach with my wife, like at sunset, if we're going to be there alone. And these things are wonderful, but there's also a time when I love to stand at the edge of the water and feel the weight of the ocean. Feel the weight of the wind hitting you, of the air just pressing up against you, and looking out into that expanse where you cannot see the other side. Now, I know in my head that the African continent is over there and the European continent, and if you could swim hard and fast enough, eventually you would run into something. But it just seems infinite. Like there's no end to it. And I love that God compares Himself in this psalm, that His wondrous works are in the deep. In verse 25 of that psalm, He commanded and raised the stormy wind, and which lifted up the waves of the sea. And of course, we have Jesus always is able to command the storms, stop the Sea of Galilee from raging and threatening to swamp the boat of the disciples. But God is not just talking about the little Sea of Galilee. He's not talking just about a river or a creek, or he's comparing the weight and the pressure of the ocean to himself. And I love this image. If you've never been to the beach, then I so encourage you. You have to make a trek. Even if you live in the middle of Kansas, you've got to make a trek to the ocean. And if you've never experienced it live, it can change your life. I'm dead serious. It can change your life to stand there at the edge of the water and feel the presence, the depth, the immense weight that the ocean has. And then, of course, if you get in it, and that first ocean wave hits you. I grew up here in Florida as a kid, so we were always surfing or at least trying to body surf. There were boogie boards everywhere, and we were trying to stand on those, which you can't really do, but we tried. And if you've ever felt the weight of an ocean wave hitting you, kind of knocking the surfboard out from underneath you, causing you to flip and turn over. And I mean, I remember one time when I got caught up in this wave that ended up being much bigger than I realized, and it kind of pushed me down in the wave to the bottom, and I was rolling along the bottom of the beach as it sloped up toward the sand, and just being pounded, just mercilessly, just beaten into the dirt until finally it kind of spat me out up onto the beach. I mean, there's no arguing with the ocean. There's no commanding it to do what you want to do. That wave is going to pick you up and carry you. There's no amount of arguing. You will never be physically strong enough to withstand it. Nothing. You have to do what it is doing. It will not bend to your will. You will bend to its will. And if you've ever been caught in an undertow, if you've ever been caught in, and I used to, as a kid, I was a very strong swimmer, and I just thought that was the stupidest thing. How could anybody drown in the ocean? Undertows, that's ridiculous in my youth and arrogance. But the first time that I was caught in an undertow, and so literally this hand grabbed me and pulled me under and began to pull me out to sea, and there was no amount of fighting against it. Nothing was going to stop me from getting out of that undertow until it let me go, and eventually it did, and I was able to pop up, 20 yards or so offshore, and kind of swim back. I mean, just exhausted, fighting against this strength. You will not bend the ocean to your will. It will only bend you. It will break you if you try hard enough. And God compares himself to that. That the will of God is like the ocean wave. There's no arguing with it. There's no standing before the will of God and saying, I'm going to declare my own destiny. I'm going to declare my own future. I'm going to do what I want to do. Any more than you could go down to the water's edge of the ocean and scream at the ocean and command it to do what you want. It's not going to. It's going to do what it was created to do. It's going to do what it was designed to do. And God is going to do what his nature is going to do. And his nature is to glorify himself. So in verse 25, he commanded and raised the stormy winds. He lifts up the waves of the sea. Verse 26 of Psalm 107, they mounted up to heaven. They went down to the depths. Their courage melted away in their evil plight. They reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end. They cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. Here in Florida, we, of course, have hurricanes. And, thank God we did not have as devastating hurricanes this year in 2020, which I'm very thankful for because it seemed like the year that we were going to have that. But we had some bad ones here. And if you've ever felt the power of a hurricane, I mean, it is a life-altering event. And I don't mean just the damage that it can cause. I've been able to do a lot of disaster relief. There's a church down in the Keys that we have done some wonderful ministry with. They've graciously allowed us to come down and partner with them. And one of the last hurricanes, I believe this was in 2017, hit the islands and flooded, and there was 2 feet of water in their church sanctuary. And these storms, I mean, literally just rip and destroy and break apart what man puts up. And a hurricane, I mean, if you can imagine, it's something that we would describe as the hand of God or the finger of God, the presence of this mighty force. I mean, wind that gets up to 200 miles an hour. You know, I've heard stories passed down from people who lived in Florida pre-Civil War era, and so before they started recording hurricanes, talking about the wind and the storms being so great that if you were caught outside, the sand being blown by the wind could literally strip the skin off you. I've heard firsthand accounts of people having to go outside in a hurricane the past 50 years and having, and they become impaled by hay straw. Hay, the same stuff we would jump in for a hay ride at a fall festival, flying through the air at 200 miles an hour and literally sticking into someone's body as if it was a bullet. This is the power that I'm talking about. This is the power of a storm like this, and this is the power of God. And this is the hand of God upon the world. His presence has been made known by these things. And it's so easy to only see the physical side. It's so easy to only see and pay attention to the physical effects. I mean, think about how we literally, the hurricane in Florida most of the time now for Floridians is just an annoyance. How long is the power going to be out? Is any of my stuff going to get destroyed? Is a tree going to fall on the roof? You know, what's going to happen? And if something is destroyed, is the insurance going to take care of it? But this life-shaking and altering event has come through our lives, and we give God so little consideration when it happens. So little thought to what God is doing. So little thought to what it means to have these things affect us. When you stand and look out over the ocean, when you stand at the edge of the beach, one of my favorite things to do is stand there and close my eyes and feel the wind upon my face, feel the weight of the water, feel the presence of God. He, like the ocean, is deep. He is infinite. The presence of him is so much greater than any hurricane, so much deeper or stronger than any ocean. But I love to get close to the depth and majesty of God. I mean, you think about it. If human love and goodness and kindness is like a 6-foot deep creek, or even maybe it's a couple inches deep bathtub, the ocean, which gets to depths of 36,000 feet. I mean, Mount Everest is 26,000, 27,000. 36,000 feet. And that's just the parts we know about. There's still caverns down there that no one has been in, and we don't know how far down it goes. Our love, our goodness, our kindness, human will, human ability is like an inch. It's a kid in a bathtub with a bath toy. God is the ocean. And see, we can't handle that. We can handle the bathtub. We can handle the kiddie pool. We can handle, a scuba diver can do 250 feet with the right oxygen and nitrous gas mix. 250 feet out of 36,000. The crafts they've had to build to go down to, recover wrecks, or the men who went down to the Titanic, or James Cameron, the famous movie director who went down to the Mariana Trench and went, I think, the deepest that anyone has ever gone. And they can't stay. They can't exist. It's such an amazing thing to go down that far. Even astronauts in space don't have the pressure that the ocean has. And this is God. This is God upon the earth. His weight, his pressure, his depth is immense. The ocean was created by him. Genesis 1. The Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. God interacts with the ocean and the depths of the ocean before he even creates us. So this is why I love to stand on the beach. I love to feel the physical presence of God. That immense weight, that immense power coming off of that water. And I want to encourage you, Christian, if you've never done that, just, take a moment, get down to the ocean somewhere, get to the water's edge, and just exist for a moment. Close your eyes and feel God there. Because we spend so much time in our lives, we spend so much time in the shallowness of humanity, and the shallowness of human ability, and the shallow waters of human love and kindness. God is the ocean. He is deep. This is why he says, come to me. Seek me for your help. Seek me for your troubles, because I have the depths of love for you. He loves you that much, that deep, and God's love is infinite. I love the other thing he says. Let me see. Let me keep going in Psalm 107 for a second. Verse 28, they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He made the storm be still. The waves of the sea were hushed, and they were glad when the waters were quiet. And he brought them to their desired haven. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. I mean, my goodness, he has calmed the storm. And he can calm the storm in your life. I mean, just think about that for a second. God can take the hurricane in your life, whether it's relationship issues or divorce or struggles, whether it's death, whether it's cancer, whatever kind of mental issues are going on, physical problems, anything, the hurricane in your life that you feel like you'll never get through, the storm that's breaking down your life that you feel I'll never be able to make it out, God can calm the storm. God can calm the water. God can take the issues and the problems that you're having, and he will cast them away from you. The same way the disciples were in that boat many times in the Gospels, and they cried out to the Lord, Lord, why are you sleeping? Why are you going to let us drown out here? Let us die. Help us, save us, redeem us, forgive us. And Jesus says, after calming the storm, after telling the water to come to behave, and it obeyed his command, Jesus simply said, "Oh, you of little faith." See, we don't believe that God can calm the storm. We think we have to do it somehow. So we do programs, and we have events, and we try to convince people that they need to come to God, when the truth is we just have to proclaim the message of the depth of God. He is deep. His love is open, his love is wide, and his love is good. There's another text I'd like to read to you from the book of Micah. The book of Micah, which is a fantastic book. If you have not read it, it can get a little somber, I suppose, but Micah is just fantastic. In Micah chapter 7, in verse 17, it says this. I'm sorry, not verse 17, verse 19. Micah 18 and 19. Who is a God like you, pardoning iniquity and passing over transgressions for the remnant of his inheritance? He does not retain his anger forever, because he delights in steadfast love. So God is not holding his anger at sin forever. He's going to take it and he's going to dispose of it. Look what he does, though, in verse 19. He will again have compassion on us, that is his people. He will tread our iniquities underfoot. You will cast all of our sins into the depths of the sea. See, God is going to take your sin, that the debt that you owe that you could not pay, only Jesus Christ can pay. He's going to take that sin and he's going to cast it into the depths of the sea, where the immense pressure is going to crush your sin. See, he could cast you into the depth of the sea, but he's not going to. No, if you go to him, Christian, he will take your sin, the pain, the hurricane in your life, and he will not only calm that water, but he will take it away. He will calm it. He will cast it into the depths of the sea, where it will be crushed by his immense pressure. And this is why you and I can completely understand Jonah. In Jonah chapter 2, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and he heard my voice. For he cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All the waves and billows passed over me. And I said, I am driven from your sight. Yet again I shall look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life, and the deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped about my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land where bars closed upon me forever. Yet you have brought up my life from the pit. O my Lord, my God, when my life was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you and to your holy temple. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love, but I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Jonah was in a storm. Jonah was in the depths of the sea, and God lifted him out, left his sin there to be crushed, and the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Christian, today be encouraged. God will take your sin and cast it to the depths where it will be crushed, because the depth of God's love for you is infinite. It is far greater than any struggle, any sin, any storm. Rest today. Trust today. Have faith today in the depth of your God.